Good morning, guys. We're here talking about FDR and the New Deal today. We have a lot to get through. Hopefully we can get through it with one video, and therefore we don't need to break it up into multiple videos. All right? Now, the essential question that we need to make sure we understand is, to what extent did Franklin Roosevelt, his New Deal, provide relief, recovery, reform during the Great Depression? Many people want to give him the credit for getting America out of the Depression, but that's not necessarily the case. Just like people want to necessarily blame Hoover for the Depression, again, that's not necessarily the case as well. The other thing we want to kind of look at is, in what ways did the Dust Bowl exacerbate the problems of the Great Depression, make it continue and go a little bit further. All right. Now, when we talk about Franklin Roosevelt and his New Deal, we're primarily talking about the first 100 days, and then an extension into the rest of his first term. Okay. You see here, Roosevelt's elected in 1932, and early into his presidency, he's going to have to deal with environment. All right, and the environment and the problems that they cause is the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl is not a football game. It literally is dust storms that kind of go straight through the Midwest, and it ruins a lot of the farms out in the Midwest. Primarily two states that are damaged the most is Oklahoma and Arkansas. Okay. And what happens is, a lot of people are going to pack up their cars and they're going to move west to California. Right. So you see the farms, you can see the trails where the crops would be laid, and they're completely gone. It looks like a blizzard, so to speak. With instead of snow banks, you have sand dunes and things like that. All right. So the people moving west were called Okies or Arkies, and literally they piled up their cars with everything they had, and they went as far west as they could in search of some type of farm work, so to speak. All right. Now, Roosevelt is elected in 32 very easily over Hoover. All right, and the Depression that made Hoover the victim is going to make Roosevelt the savior. Understand that FDR is going to be able to unite the rural and urban factions of the Democratic Party, and he's going to really appeal to not just one group of people, but to multiple areas. The Protestants and the Catholics, the farmers and the workers, the immigrants and the native born. He has a way about him that is able to get people to look at this problem of the Great Depression not as a urban problem or a rural problem, but as an American problem, that everybody who's within America has to work together to solve it. Okay. Now, Franklin Roosevelt has a condition called polio. A lot of people didn't know that during his first election. All right, but he has polio. He's from New York. He's the cousin of Theodore Roosevelt. All right, and so he comes from a very good long line of wealthy families and politically associated families. Okay. Now, he also follows Teddy Roosevelt's path when it comes to politics. He was Assistant Secretary of Navy as well, as Teddy was. Franklin Roosevelt was also the governor of New York, where he kind of tried out a lot of these welfare programs. All right. Now, to keep everything in the family, he's going to end up marrying Eleanor, who is a cousin of his, who's also very prominent and a powerful woman in her own mind. Okay. You see here, Franklin Roosevelt. I pledge myself to a new deal for American people. So the New Deal is his slogan, his campaign. You see how easily he wins. Right. Now, when FDR took over in 1933, the U.S. economy was on the brink of collapse. Understand that 1932 was the worst year of the Great Depression. You had over 25% unemployment. 38 states had total, that means every bank, failure. All right. So Franklin Roosevelt, FDR, is going to request from Congress a broad executive power to begin his New Deal program. All right, and his New Deal philosophy really looks like this. There was no detailed plan. When he ran, he had no plan. All right, but what he said was that the government was committed to action, that he would find a way to try to solve some of the problems. Right, so he had 3 R's really. You see here, relief for the unemployed, and that was his first focus. 2 is he wanted recovery for businesses and the economy. And then 3, he wanted reform for the business institutions and the economic institutions to prevent a future depression. All right. So he looked at the depression much like a war, like a world war, so to speak. Now, you could tell that he had some great characteristics early on, especially at his inaugural address, where he gives one of the greatest lines ever, where he says, "Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance." Right, so he's able to capture America with lines like this. He's so charismatic and such a good order that people want to listen to him, and they just fall into his grasp. Right. The other thing that he does that's really good early on is he addresses the public, the people, all right, with what's called fireside chats, all right, and they're called fireside chats because they happened every Sunday, about once a month or so, not every month, but once every couple months, and they're about half an hour to an hour long, where he just talks to the people, all right, and he's just reassuring the nation, that the government is doing something, that there are people just like them elsewhere, and that everybody's impacted, and he's really able just to talk to the people, and people listen to him. Sometimes politicians are known for talking at people and not talking to people, and that FDR was one of the ones who talked to people and had a real good connection with the public. All right. The other thing he did for public relations is he sent the First Lady Eleanor out, and you see all those dots there. She went and spoke about the New Deal and what FDR is doing, and she had a great connection as well to the American public. Now, his first 100 days kind of sets a precedent for all future presidents after him. They're always going to evaluate his first 100 days. And one of the things that he does is he first creates his cabinet, what's called the brain trust. All right, he tries to pick these advisors that maybe didn't necessarily have political experience, but that were expertise in different areas like economics or foreign relations or whatever. And he created a cabinet that was very diverse. He had Jews, Catholics. The first woman Secretary, Frances Perkins, is going to be appointed Secretary of Labor. He actually has another black cabinet, or black brain trust, where he calls in the prominent black leaders in America to speak with them about the issues and what could be done. So he goes about this first 100 days not on his own ideas, but on the ideas of respected advisors and appointees. Okay. And his first order of business is to restore confidence in the banking. The banking situation was horrible. So immediately he declared a 4-day bank holiday, all right, where it closed all the banks, and all he wanted to do was stop people from being able to take money out, all right, and then he would try to calm them down by putting more money into weaker banks and then opening new government-aided banks, all right. And again, people were pulling money out every day, and banks were closing every day because of less money in there. So by closing it, people weren't able to take it out. He was able to resupply money in there. Okay. The other thing he did was he created the Glass-Steagall Act, which creates the FDIC, which we still currently have today, which is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Now, if a bank closes and you had money in there and you weren't able to get it out, you're going to be assured to get up to, at this point, deposits of $5,000. Today, it's at $100,000. Okay, but the whole point is that the banks are going to be regulated, not nationalized, which is one of the criticisms that he receives. And then the economic system is going to be reformed, not necessarily changed. Okay. And you see here the number of bank failures, 4,000 banks in the year 1933, and then by 34, it's going to drastically drop. And that's a quote that's given to him. Capitalism was saved in 8 days, with the whole bank Emergency Banking Act. Now, the greatest successes of the first New Deal was the ability to offer relief to unemployed citizens. He kind of uses Hoover's Reconstruction Finance Corps, which again gave modest relief checks to about 15% of Americans. He's going to extend the RFC to what's called the FERA, or the Federal Emergency Relief Act, which is going to pump another $500 million into state welfare programs, very similar to the Obama stimulus package. There's a lot of comparisons that I'd like us to try to make about today and back then, and I think we can start seeing it now with these acts. All right. Other relief efforts for the first New Deal dealt with what he called the alphabet agencies, and that's pretty much because they're all, alphabetized and created with acronyms here. So the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, employed urban men from 18 to 25, really to keep them off the streets and keep them busy. So they sent them out west to help make national parks and work in the wilderness. All right. You had the Civilian Work Administration, which again hired 4 million men and women. Agricultural Adjustment Administration subsidized farmers just like they were during World War I, and the farmers faced a lot of success. They realized that they need to go back and do this again. So they're going to subsidize farmers, meaning they're going to control what the farmers grow and how much the price is going to be. The other thing they're going to do is they're going to take the surplus from the farms, send them to the cities, and use to help feed people in the bread lines and the soup kitchens. All right. So it's a good tool and good, I guess you could say, plan to deal with a couple issues there. All right. So there you see CCC workers. All right, CWA, AAA. All right. Now, the percentage of American families accepting government relief in 1933, it wasn't a lot. You see the green there is from 8 to 15%. The red is over 15%. So a lot of the farm areas definitely received a lot of help. In the north, not so much. All right. Now, the first attempt at economic recovery is the NIRA, or the National Industrial Recovery Act. All right, and what this is going to do is it's going to create the NRA, which set maximum hours and minimum wages for workers. All right, it's going to stimulate the industry by fixing prices and really, again, try to control that overproduction problem that they had at the beginning. It's also going to create the PWA, which is going to be used to build public roads, bridges. In fact, the bridge that's in Brunswick, going from Brunswick into Virginia, is a PWA project. All right. I guess the other thing, ending the prohibition, that was a big deal. That was also a big deal just for the comfort of America. All right, the Blue Eagle is a big symbol for the NRA. A lot of people are going to associate this with socialism. All right. Now, in terms of long-term reforms, we have the TVA, which is a very valuable agency. The Tennessee Valley Authority created all these dams in the Tennessee Valley area to create electricity and jobs. Understand, when it comes to urbanization, the Tennessee Valley is really, really rural, and still today it's one of the most rural areas in America, where the literacy rate is the lowest in America. The unemployment is the highest in America. It's really bad, but the TVA at least sets out to try to provide electric power, try to create jobs, and help spur some agricultural growth there. Also, the SEC is going to be created to regulate the stock market and prevent another crash. We still have that today. Okay. Here's just some of the dams that. So the first 100 days of FDR's administration were temporary solutions to solve problems. But understand psychologically, Americans believe that FDR was actively responding. So he may not have fixed the problem economically with money or anything like that, but socially, psychologically, he provided hope. All right, he gave some assurance to the people that Hoover didn't. All right. All right. Now, FDR is going to defeat Al Johnson